gonna try. Oh. Hi, I'd like to welcome everyone to the January 18th Design Review Board meeting. First on the agenda is call to order and a roll call, please.
Chair Kim,
Here.
Board Member Malad,
Here.
Board Member Odorsio,
Here.
and Board Member Rosner.
Here.
And for the record, Vice Chair Chong is absent.
Thank you. Anyone from the audience, either online or here in person, wishing to address the Design Review Board and any subject not on the agenda may do so at this time. You have no more than 3 minutes to speak. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on something that's not on the agenda? Okay, is there anyone online?
I'm just gonna wait a second in case there's a delay. I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, great. Now is the time for a staff briefing.
Good evening, Chair and Design Board members. I am online today. I just wanted to let you know and remind you that I will be out of the office until March 4th. We have a contract planner, Janie Alsep, who will come in and fill in for me. So you will be seeing her at the meetings, and hopefully everything will run pretty smoothly. I think we have a few meetings in February, and then I will be returning. So I have no further information at this time.
And it looks like we have a new planner.
Oh, I should have announced that. I forgot because I'm so used to having her and she's so wonderful. We have Savannah Van Aken, who has joined us, I think it's a week and a half ago. She's our new associate planner and she'll be taking over a lot of the design work. We're very excited to have her, and I think that she will be an excellent addition to our team.
Terrific. Any other announcements from the staff? Okay, next is the minutes. Does anybody from the board have any comments on or corrections to the minutes? If not, if anybody could make a motion to adopt the minutes from December 7th, that'd be great.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes 4-0 with Brian Chong absent. Next we will go to the public hearings. Just so that everyone knows the process. The applicant actually, sorry, this is an appeal. So if we could get from the town attorney, sort of rules of procedure. What we are voting on today is whether or not to support the appeal of an application. And in order to support that appeal, what are the findings that we have to make to do that? And if the majority does not approve it, what does approve it or does not approve it, what are the implications?
So your question is what findings you have to make on
Findings to support the appeal.
to support the appeal. So yeah, okay. For this one, you just have to find that staff was out of its discretion and that this was something that should have gone to the design review board. Or no,
No.
oh, is that the next one?
Resolution, there's a resolution attached to the staff report to that makes the findings with respect to the appeal and asks that the board uphold the director's decision to approve the structure. So if you look at the reso, that's where the findings are.
Is there a reso with the first one? I only see.
There is a resolution. It's attachment A to the staff report, I believe, or exhibit A. If you scroll down.
So the finding is that whether or not it's not the merits of the project, but whether or not the director had discretion.
Whether or not the director made the correct decision based on what is required for a minor design review for the accessory structure.
So for all design review applications, we look at the guiding principles and purposes that are similar with all applications that come through. So this appeal is, so the director made the decision that the structure and the subject structure complied and was consistent with those guiding principles and purposes. So the appeal would be that it's not. So that's, you would be, if you uphold the appeal, you would say that the structure does not conform with the guiding principles.
Okay, so we're not at all questioning whether or not it was in the discretion of the director, whether or not to decide this, but the findings that the director made in support of the project. Correct. Terrific. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then ask one more follow-up on that. Does that mean that the board cannot give any conditions on the project because we're voting whether or not the director made the appropriate decision on allowing the project?
I'm gonna verify with the town attorney before I respond. I believe so. So one option would be to partially, we'll say if you're upholding or denying the appeal, you could partially uphold it with added conditions. So if you find that the structure does comply, but maybe a window needs to be relocated or there's a material change, that is something, I believe, that you could add as a condition.
That's a partial denial of appeal, or is that a
No.
partial approval of appeal?
It could go either way. So
Okay.
you could deny the appeal, but say that you have to add change of the roof material. This is just as a general example. Or you could deny the appeal or uphold the appeal and then add additional requirements as part of and amend the resolution that was prepared.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Does anybody else from the board have any questions for staff? Okay, so here's the procedures for a process like this. Town staff can make a 10-minute presentation on the matter, and then respond to our questions. Then the appellant or the appellant representatives have a 10-minute window to make a presentation. Any questions that we have posed to the appellant or the appellant representative is not part of that 10 minutes. Then the applicant can make a presentation of 10 minutes. And again, same thing, if we have any questions, that is not part of that 10 minutes. And then at the chair's discretion with the consensus of the design review board, the amount specified in subsections, I'm not sure what B and C are because it wasn't stated in here, maybe increase, but each side must be given equal time. Any interested member of the public may speak on the item for no more than 3 minutes. And if there's a speaker representing multiple persons, associations, they have up to 5 minutes at the discretion of the chair. Then the appellant comes back and is entitled up to 3 minutes for a rebuttal, and then the applicant has another 3 minutes. So hopefully the rules of procedure are clear. And at this time, if the town staff could make a brief presentation on the matter, and we will ask questions as appropriate.
So if I may, Madam Chair, from the other seats, when that, so we have to kind of rewind a little bit. This project began when we were notified that this structure was not built with permits. In response, the property owner came to us. We have gone through a lengthy process with respect to this structure. The first part was we realized that this is a planned development, and in order for them to allow an accessory structure, they first needed to do a planned development amendment, which this property owner went through and was approved through the planning commission, where they had a secondary building envelope that was created to allow for the structure to be maintained. One of the conditions of that amendment was that the structure needed to go through design review. So now the applicant is coming forward with the second portion, which is the design review. One of the items we talked about was that the materials should match the existing residence, and as much as possible, we should consider the adjacent neighbor, which is what the architect currently did. So what you're seeing today is a structure that exists that is not completed, has not received design review, but what is in your packet is the proposed complete project. The use of the structure is for a gym studio, kind of more contemplative place. There is no residency there. There will be nobody living there. There's no facilities internally in this structure. And for those reasons, and it's less than the 500 square feet required to come before the design review board. And for those reasons, after consideration and looking at the plans and looking at how we got here, I approved the project as a minor design review and notified the neighbors. And then the adjacent neighbor appealed my decision, and it is before you now to determine whether or not staff evaluated it sufficiently and correctly, and whether or not we took into consideration some of the privacy issues that the appellant is bringing forward. And with that, that is my presentation. And I do want to also state, and I would like to thank the architect from the adjacent neighbor, there are some typing errors in the first paragraph of my reso, and those will be corrected before we send them for signature. The appellant's name is misspelled. There's a couple of other misspellings which will be corrected as part of the final, but it is not material in itself. Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
questions?
I just wanted to confirm, maybe I missed it in the plans, that there are no bathrooms or other.
There's no facilities inside, no.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else from the board have any questions for staff? Okay, hearing none, if the appellant can come forward, and you have 10 minutes to speak. Thank you.
It's going to take just a couple seconds to get the projector started, so I'm going to wait to start the timer until that starts.
With the arrow,
Do you mind
please.
of that light? You can, if you want to point.
Uh-huh. Could that be a little bit more bright? It's quite difficult to see.
The lights will adjust it.
Okay, thank you. I'm trying to learn how to work with this. So you will be
Just let us.
moving it. Okay, I'll actually. Great. Hello. My name is Firuze Hariri. I live in on 163 Avenida Miraflores. I have lived there since 1977 and have always enjoyed my privacy, which now I'm trying to make sure I will save it. As you can see on these images, which are difficult to see, you could move the images around, please. So they could see all the bedrooms. These are all my bedrooms. We only have 3 bedrooms. And as you could see, these pictures, they have not been edited. They have not been zoomed. It's true pictures that your eyes would see it. And the room that they are proposing, or they have actually built it without the permit before, it's right into my bedrooms. I mean, I will lose completely my privacy from every single bedroom and master bathroom. When I opposed my neighbor's request on a secondary building envelope because of the negative impact that would have on my property, I was told that I should raise my concerns when they filed for a building permit. However, their building permit was approved by the staff despite my concerns. We are both blessed to have such a large lot, and we don't need to build so close to each other to intrude to each other's privacy. And that's all I'm asking, with all the windows and glass windows that they have on facing our rooms. They could see right inside my room every single minute, even though they are claiming that they are not going to be living in that room, which I understand, but they will be exercising, they will be entertaining, they will be, I'm sure, doing many other things. It's a 200 square feet room. So they will obviously be spending a lot of time there. And with all those windows, I'm gonna lose completely my privacy, which I have had for over 40 years. And that's why I'm appealing their project.
Thank you. Are you deferring the rest of your time then?
I'm done.
Back with, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If the applicant can come up or the applicant representative, you have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Members of the board, good evening. My name is Michael Heckman. I'm a local architect. I've been working with Sharon and her husband to process their gazebo and to get the necessary approvals that were not secured originally. So I've read the comments from the neighbor, Ms. Hariri, and she notes two things which are in her letter of the 19th about windows and trees. So I would like to go to her photos first. I think anyway, I'll go to these photos, which I took in September of 2022. So this is a view near the gazebo in question. You can see it on the left there, looking back toward the Hariri property. And it's pretty obvious there is dense vegetation there. All the trees on her property have filled in. And it's hard to even distinguish a house, much less a door or a window. I think all we can really tell is she's got a skylight and a chimney. So I don't believe that she's proven that there is a privacy issue from this structure toward her property. All right, the next photograph. So this is another photo, same time period. It's just slightly farther back around to the, I guess it's the west, actually, away from the gazebo. But you can see the same situation with all the vegetation, that there's excellent separation visually between the two buildings. And then lastly, I have a photo which is a little bit farther to the west. And it shows the panoramic view around to the right. And I don't believe that it makes any sense that my clients would be staring toward the neighbor's house when this is an option of how to enjoy the open view toward, that's Del Mar School playground, and then you've got Richardson Bay and the Headlands, Strawberry Peninsula. So a lot of interesting elements to take in as you might use their gazebo. I think the staff has been very thorough in their review of the project and noted that this is a very common garden structure in Tiburon. And its side yard location is a acceptable location. Also, I wanted to look at the aerial view, which is on page, it's the first drawing sheet, A 1.0, I believe. No, 0.1. Oh, I just want to see the aerial photo. So here's the gazebo right here. And Ms. Hariri's house, the Shamir property, and their residence. So the gazebo, its location is rotated slightly clockwise away from the geometry of the Hariri house. So that means that this set of door window openings basically look through these trees or to that other view that I noted to the water. And there are glass openings on this side, which basically looks down the property line toward the street. And then they've also noted in the staff report the distance between these two structures. It's over 100 feet from there to there. And I think by virtue of that distance and the vegetation that's in place, that there is no privacy issue, that the staff did do a correct and thorough review, and that the appeal is not substantiated. So I don't think she's proven the privacy issue. The neighbor has the option to install other landscaping in places that she chooses would give her the most effect. Then she can control the health and the height and the position of any of this screening that she wants to. I think to ask us to do that would be at cross purposes to what she wants to accomplish. So I would just ask that you reject the appeal and reinforce the approval provided by staff originally. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Board have any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you so much.
No questions?
No questions. Any interested member of the public has 3 minutes to speak. If there's anybody here in person who'd like to speak, please come forward to the microphone and state your name and address, please. Okay, seeing none, is there anybody online who'd like to speak about this?
I'm just waiting in case there's a delay, but I do not see any hands raised.
Great. Now the appellant is provided 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you.
Hold on 1 second, the timer is set at 5.
You're correct. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Well, I'm just wondering that Mr. Heckman has not seen these pictures that I provided and all these slides. Would you have the slides up again from the bedrooms? That you could see my bed and our bathroom that is looking right into that window. How could they deny that? I had specifically asked all the staff and all the board members even to come and see it for yourself. And Thank God, Alex actually came by and he has seen it. And you could see, this is from my hallway. The hallway that we walk by the room, I took a picture just to see that even from the hallway inside the house, you could truly see the building. And these are real pictures. They are not zoomed in. They're not altered. They're not photoshopped. This is what your eyes see. And we didn't have that for 40 years. Now we have a building with tons of windows looking right into our place. How could they, how would the staff approve such a thing? I'm just puzzled. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you. If the applicant can come up, you have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sharon. I'm the owner of 165 Avenida Miraflores. About the privacy issue. We are all suffering from a privacy issue. If you can show my pictures that I sent you. So we have neighbors on the other side of our house. They are even closer to my bedroom. This is a picture from my bedroom. You can see their house. I'm sorry about the screen, but that's what they have. They can see inside my bedroom, my bed and everything. Well, their house is higher than mine. Everything looks bigger when you're down. And so it's the same with our neighbor because we are higher than her property. From every place in the property, you can see inside her bedroom. You've been there, you saw it, no matter where you go, even from my kitchen window, I can see her bedroom. I can see everything. We are higher. I cannot move the house. It is what it is. And this building is there, as Mr. Heckman said, 100 feet from her house. Privacy, I would go live in a ranch in someplace deserted that if I want privacy. This is a neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you so much. At this time, we're going to close it up from the public and discuss amongst ourselves whether or not we can make the findings to either support or deny or conditionally approve the appeal. So anybody like to go first? Sure, go ahead.
This building is about at least 95 feet away at its closest point to the downhill neighbor's house. And in spite of it being in the view plane, one of the things that I've observed over the years is outbuildings, swimming pools, patios are very occasionally used. It's not as though you're sitting there staring out that window and creating privacy for somebody else on an adjacent parcel. I'm just guessing, but I do recall a condition where my family put in a swimming pool and we swam in it every single day for the first week, and 3 or 4 days the second week, and 2 days the third week. And the fourth week, we swam in it 1 day, and thereafter it was an occasional during the summertime. We'd swim one at a time. I suspect this building is somewhat like that. It's a seductive place to go out and be in it, and you will experience people being in it for quite a bit for the first month. But the usage will taper off. You also have the option of planting a very small number of trees would give you pretty good privacy there if you want to get more privacy than you have. So I would say that the staff did an appropriate approval on this. I would like to add that I think the color of the building should be darker than the existing house. I think it should be in a 60 to 70% gray tone, because that will blend with the tree background. gray greens, gray browns, whatever. But I do think that the color ought to be darker than the existing house because it's in a field of green trees. So my suggestion would be that you darken the color of the new building if it is approved.
Thank you. Anybody else from the board like to speak?
Sure, it is a non-dwelling building. I agree that the most obvious buffer would be vegetation along that property line. And I know the focus has been on the windows. If there is, I think Jim brings up a point, if there is a way to have less observation of the building by darkening the tone, I could be convinced of that, but I really thought the vegetation buffer and the fact that it's non-dwelling did not make me want to deny the appeal, or made me want to deny the appeal.
Thank you.
So I did visit both properties. And I see, I see the point from the neighbor, being in the house. I think those pictures were representative. I think there's a big perception of an invasion of privacy because you now see a building and it's a large structure relative to what was there before. I think the good news is when I was in the building and you cannot see, the distance is large enough where you do not see into the neighbor's house. I think the perception from the neighbor that you can is real because the structure's there. And I'll get back to vegetation because I do think that can be a good solution here to obstruct the visual impact on the neighbor. Where there is some, I don't think there's privacy impact. I think there is visual impact. I actually do think it's a gym. I've been in the gym. I think it will be used. But I actually think the previous spot of a big flat patio where if I lived there, I'd put big couches, there'd be more people. I do think this is going to be concentrated to maybe 2 people at most in there at one time. So it gives me greater belief that I just don't think there's a privacy issue, but I think there's a visual impact and it's I think it could be improved. I think there could be a lot of goodwill with some vegetation. I see the argument for giving the applicant or the appellant kind of free will to put it in vegetation and put the onus on her. I think it's a little challenging given the existing vegetation in her yard and some mature fruit trees. I think there's some opportunity to put some evergreen hedges on the applicant's side, like a couple 8-footers or something. I think that I do think solves that perception of the invasion of privacy, and I think will make the neighbor a lot happier. So I would be in what did we say, support of denying the appeal with a minor modification of a couple evergreen hedges if the board feels similarly.
I think there's a very different perception when you see a window versus is that someone going to actually look into your own window. Just because you see a window doesn't mean that someone's going to sit there looking into your building. This isn't a huge, rec room. This is a pretty modest little shed that's being used for gym equipment. So it's not going to be party central. The view from there, yeah, maybe you get a view of Richardson Bay, but the views are from the house. That's where you're gonna have the party. So you're not gonna go to a tiny little shed and have I don't know, when you have a giant house. So in terms of vegetation, I don't think it's on the onus of the applicant. Actually, I think because here's why I don't think it's an onus. I think if the appellant feels that there is an potential invasion of privacy, the appellant can actually tailor that vegetation to her so that it really does protect her. Because if we just say vegetation, I mean, it's just, it may or may not provide the privacy. So in order to best tailor their concerns, I think the appellant has all the rights to plant vegetation to protect herself. So I mean, I could see how there's not really room there. I mean, you saw where the shed's located, it's right at the wall. There's not really. There's a wall there and then you would have to go down, but I just don't see why we need to condition it because I don't think it's gonna necessarily, the vegetation that they select is not necessarily gonna work in their behavior, in their behalf, because they don't want a piece of, it's a tiny little room. They don't want to have a large tree covering up their couple of windows, you know? So I actually think I could support the, denial of appeal as is.
Did you go into the shed or the gym?
Yeah.
Okay.
I went in today. I didn't go inside. I was right there. Yeah. And I tried to look into the other house. I couldn't see. I saw the windows, but I didn't, you can't really make out. It was too far.
Yeah. I think the perception of the invasion of privacy and the visual impact is much greater than the actual privacy, which I think we're all in agreement.
Yeah,
And how do
yeah.
we solve for that? Is it can be solved? Is it vegetation on?
But is that the onus on every single applicant to make sure that there's no impact on anything, on anybody? I mean, that's not a reasonable. There's gonna be an impact on everybody, you know, whether it's smaller smaller, bigger, or, you know, real or perceived, but is the job of the design review board to prevent any type of impact? No. It's not. I mean, there's always gonna be an impact.
What do you think, Jim?
I think that the actual issue of privacy is very small. And the distance, the light, dark values, you know, yes, you'll feel for a little while, maybe you'll see somebody occasionally looking through that window, but it'll be very, very infrequent. I just don't see that it's being a major issue. I think it should be approved. The staff did the right, made a correct finding.
Okay. Are we ready for a vote? So we want to try to make a motion and then we can try to vote on it. Do you want to try to make a motion? Do you want to make a motion? Would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move that we deny the appeal and support the staff decision and any necessary findings in addition that the staff requires.
Anybody second his motion?
Second.
Should we do a voice vote, or should we do a roll call?
You can just do a voice vote or show of hands.
Okay, all in favor of the denial of the appeal, in favor of that? Would I? All oppose, hearing none, the denial of the appeal passes 4-0 with one board member who's not here abstaining. Next up on the agenda will be 1868 Mountain View Road. This is the more typical item where the applicant has 5 to 20 minutes. Then there's an opportunity for a design review board to ask the staff or appellant questions. And then public testimony, 3 minutes per speaker. And then the applicant may respond to public comments, 5 minutes. And then we close the public hearing and deliberate. So looks like the applicant has 5 to 20 minutes. Yeah.
Hello, board. Hello again. I feel like you've seen me here on this property more than once, maybe more than I should be. But it's good to see you again, and I want to apologize to my client, the property owner, Ryan Bedrosian, was scheduled to fly back this morning from Colorado. His flight got canceled, snowed in, so he's available on Zoom. But he and I talked earlier and decided it'd be easier if I just do the presentation instead of trying to coordinate back and forth. That never works nicely. But he's available if there are questions in particular, or if we need his input on something. So a little bit of backstory, as you probably recall, we've tried out a couple of different locations for adding a garage to this project. When we permitted it originally, we had simply a sort of parking pad area here on the roof of this ADU structure. And then after Ryan and Regina had their first child, and the bikes started to pile up, and the strollers and the toys and the things and rain and groceries, they realized that that's just not going to be okay. They had this idea that they'd be fine without an enclosed garage, but they really feel like they need one. Kind of makes sense. I had tried to talk them into that originally, but they had said, no, we don't need that. So we've tried out a couple locations. So we tried here and had a presentation before you over a year ago, I think, in that regard. And that location just had a lot of opposition from uphill neighbors across the street who felt it was either they could see it, or it was sort of not really blocking the view, but kind of in the view, basically towards the harbor. And then the downhill neighbors were similarly not that excited about looking up and seeing more structure. So even though that was in a lot of ways the best location for us for the garage, because it had a direct interior connection to the kitchen, which is right here, we thought, let's try something different. And then in March 2023, we had a really productive study session. Well, it was very productive, but there was only Chair Kim and I think Board Member Mallet were the only two people able to be here that day. But still, it was really good. We worked through a lot of ideas about pushing and pulling the garage. What can we do to minimize its impact? We know it's going to need a variance of some form or another, but kind of trading off different variance ideas against each other. And so we ultimately sort of alighted on the scheme that we're showing you today, which is to locate the garage up here. So it's located in the front setback. It actually touches the front property line, or almost touches the front property line right there. It's at the end of this driveway, which already exists today, like existed prior to our project and is part of our project. So all of this was there. This was basically just a driveway to drop off to the front door of the house, which is here. And so the sort of front door position and the drop off necessitates that the garage can't really move this way very easily without blocking the front of the house. But up in this corner, we were able to push the garage down sort of low enough that it really tucks into the hillside. And then we're also planning and have a landscape architect who's worked up a scheme for a green planted roof on top. So that's sort of where we got to last time. We were also encouraged at that time to make sure that we sized the garage sort of big enough that it could accommodate things. So we were using the whole 600 square feet that's allocated by code for that. So anyway, that's sort of how we've gotten to where we are. And in this case, then we need two variances. We need that front setback variance for that position, which I think is really a very common occurrence on downslope lots, the need to put your garage in the front setback, whether that's really raised up and you drive in straight off the street, or whether you have a kind of cross slope driveway that's trying to tack across the grade to get down into the driveway. One way or another, it's like just very common on this street and in adjacent streets to have to end up putting your garage in the front setback. So that's sort of our basis for that variance. And then the lot coverage variance here really centers around the sort of bowl-like shape of the topography. Our lot sort of dips in the middle and back up. And so it means that a lot of our landscape area and the pool that are planned in here, they count as lot coverage because they're technically far enough above natural grade. Although when they're all built, they won't feel that way. They'll just feel like the grade that would have been there because we're sort of filled in this bowl shape. And then we have this existing structure, the footprint of which we're not really increasing, and that was already quite large. So kind of over here, we needed a lot coverage variance. Over here, we also need one, sort of no matter where we put this garage, we're gonna need a lot coverage variance. So I think in the study session, we really tried to work through a kind of like no harm, no foul. What's the least impact way that we can achieve this garage? The roof of the garage is essentially level with the street. And so by the time you have a fence and a hedge here, you literally can't see, you won't see the garage, but even if you do get a peek of it, it's a planted surface. You might not even know it's a garage. And although we have a 0 front setback, the curb edge of the street is actually pretty far back. So it won't even feel like it's at the front setback. You can't perceive the front property line in this location because the street isn't the property line. So it kind of feels like there's more breathing room there anyway. So that's kind of the nature of the project. I think if you could flip to AG 3.50, let's just forward a few sheets. That's back, yeah, perfect. So there we can see it in cross section. You can see the way the roof is basically at the road here. This is the front property line. So this is all this area that feels like front yard, but is actually public way. It's all planted or will be planted. There will be a hedge and a fence up here as well. And then the portions of the building will actually we'll end up rolling the grade in here a little bit. We wanted to show the natural grade, but we'll actually kind of like roll it back in for drainage away from the building. Any small portions of the building that pop up above that natural grade are clad in a kind of rough stone. So they read like landscape walls more than like building walls. And then, yeah, if you could go forward to L 1.0, almost at the end of the drawing set. Back one. Great. So there we've got the planting plan and, again, you can kind of see, it's almost hard to see the garage roof because it's going to be an extension of the same species and types of plants that we'll be using in other parts of the yard. So that's, I think all I want to say about the nature of our project. We did get a letter in from our neighbors at 1860 Mountain View Drive, the Zacks, really nice couple. I've met with them a ways prior when we were contemplating different locations. I understand their concerns and I'm always really want to hear neighbor concerns. I read through them. I did go on site today after reading their letter to just take a look at their concerns in person in relation to the story poles. And if we could flip over to the photos, that would be great. Oh, there we go. So I just want to walk through some photos that I took on site today. Have you all been to the site as well? Great. So you can see that there's the top line story pole. So standing on the streets. So, again, you can see how low slung and relatively invisible this is from the street. If we go to the next photo. Here we can see the outline of the roof. And you can see that there's literally like a wall of mature vegetation on the property line and on the Zacks, mostly on the Zack side, but like right there at the property line and at the fence. I mean, I looked at it today, I was like, somebody needs to prune this a little bit and more than plant more. So you can this is a little bit of brown, you can see kind of in here, that's a tiny bit of the siding of the Zacks home through there. But it's a pretty solid vegetated condition. And flip to the next photo, please. This is looking as you would be looking sort of straight down the driveway. The driveway surface will actually be up here. And then there's the top of our garage. So, the Zacks have some concerns about sort of light or privacy or noise in relation to cars sort of approaching them. Really, the axis of this driveway doesn't really go towards their house. Their house is kind of over here. I think any sort of light issues are blocked by the garage itself and the vegetation that's there. The vegetation will buffer any sound. But also these will be relatively slow moving cars on a driveway. We'll obviously specify a very smooth and quiet garage door opener. Our clients will want that as well. And if you go to the next photo, please. In this one, this is the only one where I did any markup. I just showed where we have one high clear story window on the back corner of our garage to just pull a little bit of natural light in one location. So I kind of marked basically where that would be in relation to these story poles. I don't think that window presents any kind of light pollution or privacy concern. Obviously, a garage isn't really an occupied space anyway, but I think all we will see through there is just a wall of trees. I think it will be hard for the Zacks to see that window at all. If you all feel like it's problematic in some way, we're open to discussing it, but I think it's probably okay. So I think that's all I've got to say. Available for questions for sure.
Is there any glazing on that side, on the main building?
On this side?
Yeah,
Of the building or of the proposed garage?
the building.
Of the actual house?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's glazing on that side of the house. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, definitely,
Okay.
definitely. There's windows in a bedroom that's on this level. And I think on the floor above, I think it's solid in this area.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was solid on the sides, but I guess there is a little bit of.
No, there's kind of select windows
Okay.
on the sides.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was all similar to the glazing that was there prior to our remodel, obviously replaced and everything. And that was all kind of reviewed and
Mhm.
and actually even worked out. A different owner owned that house at the time we were permitting our previous, like our main project, and the house was sold. So we weren't interacting with the Zacks at that point. We're interacting with Jan Brandt, I think her name was.
Okay.
And she had some privacy concerns around our terrace, and we had put up a filter wall to protect that. So yeah, that was all kind of covered under a different time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jim, you had some questions?
A couple of things. One is that slope from the street down to the side of the garage
Yes.
is greater than a 2-to-1 slope, it looks like, and that's almost impossible to walk on or even to maintain plants on.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to get any soil staying on it because it'll be washed off pretty fast.
Mm.
My recommendation is either you put in some small terraces there or raise it more dramatically than what I thought you were pointing to there,
Right.
because you do want to have vegetation covering that area. You're trying to camouflage the garage from the street.
Yeah.
Make a green mound out of it or something. You've done well on the roof. I like that. But I would suggest you do something more. I don't think it needs to be a condition of approval, but I do think you should be careful with that slope because it's not a stable slope.
Yeah, that's a good.
Yeah, so these
Suggestion.
are more questions, but yeah.
A question, one question I had was, if you're gonna have lights in the garage, is there a timer or something on your lighting? Can you do that?
Yeah, we can put a timer on the lights so that or an occupancy sensor really on the lights so that if nobody's in there, they're off. Yeah. That's
Finally,
fine.
last question, what is the color of the stone? I don't see it anywhere in the package I got.
Right, it's a kind of a mottled gray and brown.
I'm sorry, I do see a piece on the back. It's the same as the house then?
It's the same as the house. Yeah, it's the same stone material as the house, but there isn't any of that stone on this side of the house. Right, all that stone is on the back side of the house.
But there's gonna be stone on the garage.
Yes, now there will be stone on the garage. That's right.
And it's the El Dorado cut.
That's
Okay.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't want to introduce a new material.
Thank you.
That didn't make sense.
Okay. Alex, Jim. No questions?
I'm good
Okay.
with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, any interested member of the public, please come up and state your name and you have 3 minutes. Thank you so much.
Okay. Hello, good evening. I'm Diane Zack and I live at 1860 Mountain View, which you just heard about. Obviously, the neighbor most impacted and directly affected by this project. And I'm glad you saw my letter. Hopefully you saw the letter. There were some other issues which I'm not going to include in the public remarks tonight, but I think you should read the letter. We were dismayed not to have conversations with the architect and the owner before we got the mailed notice from the town, because I did note that in the March hearing, the design review board talked specifically more than once about, you'll talk with the neighbors, you'll talk with the Zacks. And so, so we're kind of scrambling, but here are the main concerns. I think they're very reasonable solutions. I'm not opposing the garage. Because I understand they would want a garage. But I did have concerns about that window. So I'm just going to go through the things that I think we could modify maybe. Is there any way to move that window to the wall facing the street instead of having it in the back at all? I don't know why it has to be on the back wall facing our property of the garage, back wall of the garage. Why couldn't it be moved if you insist on a window? I know we don't have a window in our garage, but I don't even know what difference it's going to make. Because there are some trees, they're actually not sufficient, but I'll get to that in a minute, but they're not going to get much direct light. And I don't know how much indirect light either there. I am concerned about the engineering and soils reports because we're concerned about drainage and runoff, and they're going to cut in, they're going to put it down low, and there's going to be some cutting into the hill. So I leave that up to the town. That's not my expertise, but I just presume the engineers will make sure that everything's done properly when it's being constructed. The setback variance, I know it's in the front, it's not on the side, so we're grateful for that. I just don't want that to change, of course. I did like the suggestion about planting terraces on the street for the benefit. I can probably speak for all my neighbors would be happy about that, probably, to make sure there is greenery on the street. But of course, my concern needs to be the greenery in between our property and theirs. And I think these pictures, they're a little misleading because if you're on our property looking, it doesn't look that dense. There are some big trees. There's also a lot of open spots. So I would actually like to respectfully request a little bit more planning, and maybe we could meet on site, the architect or the landscape architect, and we could meet and just help screen a little more. I don't think it's even a big expense, but the wall of mature vegetation, which is what I just heard, it's not exactly like that when you're on our property. And of course, where you're standing, there's a view that he took from where he was. Sure, there are a couple big trees, but there's some openings, and we would like a little more additional. It's a little skimpy in many places. And then finally, the noise issue. I think I heard that the applicant would also like a nice, quiet garage door opening mechanism, which of course we want to make sure. I think the newer ones hopefully are quiet. I just put that in there. I don't know if you require that anyway in the town. And I don't know how much garage insulation there is. To make sure that sound that, the cars, if there's a car idling or there's a noisy car in the garage, that it's baffled. And just, I think everybody would be happy with that. And the
pardon me.
timer light was also a good suggestion.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else from the public who'd like to speak? Is there anyone online who'd like to speak?
I do not see any hands raised.
Okay, great. If the applicant can come back up, you have 5 minutes for questions and an opportunity to talk.
Thank you, Diane. Thanks for being here too. Yeah, I think those are really all workable things. Our landscape plan already shows additional planting in our side setback. So we'd be happy to talk with you when we get to the point of sort of actually, we have plans specified from the landscape architect, but to look at that in detail with you, I think that would be fine. We are planning to do planting in there. And so we could look at where those sort of holes are that you describe and see if we can position to fill properly. I think, we do ideally still want to keep the natural light in there so you don't have to have a light on. I'll kind of leave it to the board to decide if they think there's an issue there. We could move the window left or right in some way, maybe, or something. I don't think it poses a privacy issue, but we kind of leave it to you guys to decide. And in terms of the soundproofing, a couple of things to note that the heavier construction necessary for the stone veneer wall, which is, a stucco base, and then the stone, that mass is going to help. And then we will insulate the garage. So we will fully, we'll actually insulate all of those walls as if it's a conditioned space. so that if Ryan and his kid are working on a project, they want to run a space heater for a little bit or something, they can do that. So I think that those, and they'll be 2x6 construction. So I think those will be relatively hardy, heavy, low, low sound transmission kind of walls. And frankly, really a lot more sound blockage than if that garage didn't exist, right? If you had a car parked in front of the front door in the previous driveway only design and that car was idling, the garage actually is the sound buffer. So it's kind of good in that way, as long as we, do a nice, smooth, easy action kind of garage door closer. So I think we can be on the same page about those items. I think as Jim suggested, just on the planting, we might have to do some like low rock wall, like just very natural sort of little mini terraces by just building up rock walls and having the ground kind of step enough for the planting to be sustainable and the irrigation to work. And that's something we can definitely do with our gardener.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. At this time, the hearing is, public testimony is closed, and now we will deliberate amongst ourselves. Anybody want to take a stab going first? Should we start from this end?
Well, I think you guys were, unless you want to jump in, but you guys were here for the design session, so it might be more helpful to
Yeah,
hear your perspectives, given you gave guidance.
I'll
Go.
go for it.
sure.
Yeah, I think this is a much better solution to your garage location than the previous ones for a number of reasons, not the least of which is it doesn't add more mass to the existing building, which the other location did. I was hoping you would come with a little more dug into the hillside look, but this is pretty far along toward that direction. I think with regard to that window, the more I think about it, the one window, you need a window in a garage. It's not unreasonable. But if you shifted it so it faced the house, then any lights that are on in a garage will affect you, but it won't affect your neighbor. That might be the easiest solution to that. I would like to see the stone darker on the garage than on the house, because I'd like to see that garage look more like it's built into the hillside than you've done so far. But I'm not going to make a condition of approval. I don't think it's that much. I just think aesthetically, you have a house that is standing on its own and has been remodeled to preserve the original design of the original house. It doesn't want to have a tag onto it. That's a finite piece of work. If you can make the garage look like it's more a separate item, it will actually improve the design of the house, make the house stand out more. With regard to the soils and structural report, this house has had a lot of structural engineers on it. I'm sure they'll do that for the garage too. I don't have anything more. I think that I've already said that those terraces on the uphill side are kind of critical. I live on a house on a hillside that's as steep as this, and I know I've spent 40 years terracing a hillside. So if you don't do it now, you will end up doing it sometime. But I thank you for coming this far with your design. I hope you can get it done quickly.
Jim, would you explain the window? I didn't understand your comment about the window. I was
Yeah.
satisfied with where they put it and
The window
the
on
fact that there are already windows on that side of the house. Would you?
Yeah, the window as it's now placed is on the
Side.
on the
Right.
neighbor's side. It's the side yard
Right.
window. And I'm saying, just go around the corner 90 degrees and face the house. That actually will get them more light because they will get, in some cases, direct sunlight. During the middle of the year, you'll get direct sunlight coming in that window, but you'll get good bounce light the rest of the year.
He's just saying.
So I'm just saying,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I understand that. I
and,
just.
and
didn't know
it'll
what wall
also
you were
remind
referring
them that the light's on in the garage.
I'm happy with the location and that it's more part of the earth and more part of the, than part of the building. You know how I feel about the building. I won't go into that, but, I see plenty of vegetation in your plan, but I feel that you'll be conciliatory towards the neighbor and try to find a solution that could work. I'm confident that they don't want, the residents don't want to have a noisy garage either, so all the garage openers now are pretty quiet and that's pretty standard. And in terms of noise, we're going towards EVs, right? By 2030, that's all what's gonna happen, so. It's just, I think the noise pollution should go down. I mean, there'll be people with gas cars, but I just. I mean, with a small kid, you don't wanna be revving up your engine all the time, so. I have confidence, so I think it's at the right place, so, yeah.
Yeah, could I add one more thing?
Sure.
I forgot to mention that I would also be able to make the findings for the front setback variance and for the lot coverage variance.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I think we can make the findings, the 4 findings for the 2 variances that are being sought, so I can make those findings as well. Attorney, do we have to go through each of them? The other attorney makes us do it, but. Okay, okay, thank you.
You do have to make the CEQA finding.
Yeah, we'll make that in the, that we're categorically exempt. We'll make that, assessment at the end, but yeah.
Yeah, from my end, I mean, I agree with the two of you. You know, I understand the original, kind of complaints from the first design from the uphill neighbors, which were addressed with the new location. It seems like the majority of, a lot of the, you know, concerns from the Zacks in this letter have been addressed and understand will be addressed except for the window, which I think we'll have to make a final decision on. I'm a little, if it makes no difference for the applicant to move that window that way, then it's just a win-win for everyone. So I'd encourage that. And that's yeah, I can obviously make the findings as well.
We can't, we're not opening up the thing, so yeah. Jim?
Well,
Sorry.
yeah, I would encourage moving the window, but it wouldn't prevent me from approving it as drafted.
I might be blind. I'm having plan issues, but I can't see an elevation on that side. I don't know what the materiality is. Is it stone on that side? I have no idea. It's stone all the way, all 4 sides. Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what is your question?
Okay. AG.
Oh, yeah, right here.
Oh, I see. Okay. I see that elevation. Yep. Yeah.
I'm just saying, back it around the corner to the right.
Yep.
I don't think it wouldn't be a structural issue, I'm sure.
I do support having natural light and it seems to be the right side because if you go to the other side, if you go to the front, that's where they're having the storage. So it doesn't make sense to have the light there. So, or the natural light there. So I think that'll help. And anybody have any comments about that? So.
I didn't hear what you.
Oh, I'm just saying that the plan was showing that on this side towards the street, actually there's storage there, so putting some kind of a clear story on that side will make less sense. I think having it, that's probably the right side is on the building side, facing the existing
Right. Yeah, for
Pretty.
privacy and safety issues, you wouldn't want a window on the street side.
Yeah.
either. You would not do that.
Yeah, but it's gonna be high enough, so it's not like people are gonna be looking outside. It's just gonna be bringing light in, and then at night it would create a little bit of light, but with, maybe we can have a condition also on the, an occupancy sensor so that it's just not on all the time, but facing the building, they'll be cognizant of that as well. So anybody want to take a stab at making a motion? I'll make a motion, to approve, the resolution with two conditions. The first is an occupancy sensor and the second is moving the window to the existing building side.
Second, oh, did you have an?
And don't forget the CEQA finding, please, within that motion.
Oh, and that it's categorically exempt from CEQA.
And did you do the front setbacks and the lot coverage, right?
And that we can make the findings for the two variances, which is a side setback variance as well as a lot coverage overage variance.
Actually, it's the front setback and the
Lot
Lot
coverage.
coverage.
floor area coverage.
Yep.
So it's not the side. Just want to make sure that we got that right.
Oh, it's a front setback. You're right. It's a front.
There's no
setback from-
side. There's only a front. Yeah.
There is no side setback being sought. Yes, apologies.
No
Uh,
problem.
stand corrected. So that was my convoluted motion. Should I repeat that? No.
I'll
I
second.
got it.
Okay.
You have-
Okay, shall we take a roll call vote or a voice vote?
You can do voice.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes to accept the resolution as with the two conditions and that it's categorically exempt from CEQA. And there is no opposing vote and there's one abstaining because that board member's not here. Thank you so much. Next on the agenda is a design review session, a sort of a charrette session on 114 Lyford. Dina or Samantha, would you like to sort of lay the ground rules on this?
So we don't have any specific ground rules per se, because it is not as if it's a public hearing. What we have done in the past is that the applicant or property owner, whomever, has some time to present the project. And then the board members provide feedback. And then hopefully we wrap this up with some type of direction for the applicant so they can bring it back for the board to consider the design. So the intent is just to have a free-flowing kind of conversation from both the applicant and the board. And of course, the public, there's a public portion as well. We allow the public an opportunity to present their concerns so that we can direct some of those comments. So I would start with the applicant, then you can ask for the anybody there. I don't know if anybody is in the room, but anybody that wishes to speak, and then you can begin discussion. It's not technically a public hearing. Does that make sense to the board?
Great. I think, Jim, you weren't here for the presentation. Should we try to do a little bit of introduction or do you think that's?
I'm familiar with the house just
Yeah.
because I've been to it 2 or 3
Sure,
times now.
sure.
but,
Okay,
I don't need a presentation of.
that sounds great.
The applicant does have a presentation as well, so that'll be part of it,
Sure.
and there's a model as well.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much and welcome. Talk to the Microsoft, everything has to be recorded, so yes, please.
I think you could just leave it over there.
And if you talk at the model, please bring the microphone so we can record your voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, okay,
And just let us know when you want us to check out.
okay. It's a repeat for three of you and not for Jim. And my name is Nushin Oshideri. I'm the owner, the designer for 114 Lyford Drive. And all we want to do is make this house functional for our lifestyle and age in place. And the main issues for us is having one floor of common area and 2 bedrooms. And then have the opportunity to utilize the views that 100% of the homes on that hillside have the advantage of. Our existing home is basically sitting on Lyford, and it's like a motel, and the noise, and there are 4 bedrooms on the Lyford side that is just basically not usable. So this is Bob Hamati, my husband, and he's gonna continue with the presentation.
Okay, just if we could go through these slides here. The first one basically is showing that our proposal, I mean, the left one is existing house that you see is a rectangle, you know, right by the side of Lyford, like a motel, all the bedrooms on Lyford, noisy and all of that. So what we're proposing is to extend it into the rest of the land, as you see on the right side. And those bubbles show all the setbacks that are required, and we're way below all the required setbacks. As you see on the left side, on the right side, the allowed setback is 54, and it's 54, and we're coming in only 25. On the upper side is 37 feet, and we're coming only 25 feet.
It's the opposite. The allowed setbacks is 25 feet, and we're all the way to 37 feet at the upper narrowest point, and then at the widest point is 54.7. And then on the south side is 15 feet allowed, and we are at the 46 feet 8 inches and 77 feet. So by zoning, we are way under what it's allowed to with the setback.
So next, this is just showing the layout that, again, the bedrooms that we were talking about on the Lyford side. And the only room that we really get the view is the living room that is pointed out there. And so we're proposing to demolish, I mean, keeping the exterior skin on this side and demolish the interior walls to reconfigure it into living spaces. Here is a demonstration of what we could gain by extending that right wing, being able to enjoy the view of the whole hillside. Right now, we're only on the left side, we're only capturing the view of the hill. And we're indicating those principles there, like guideline 3 in the principle D of the design review guidelines, capturing views of San Francisco, Golden Gate Bridge, Richardson Bay, and all of that, that all the rest of the houses on that hillside are enjoying. This is the interior of our existing house on the left side. That, you know, we call it a tunnel effect. That corridor that we have is a dark corridor with the bedrooms on the 2 sides. The only spot in the house is this bottom area that gets the view. So we're proposing moving the living areas to the right side, which is the majority of our land, to enjoy the, you know, partially build on that part of the land on this right wing of the house. So the lower level here, we are digging into the hillside actually. So over half of this whole addition that we have is dug into the hillside, is under the, it's going to be under a deck. It's not going to be visible from any neighboring houses or Lyford or anywhere. While we are redoing this exterior of the building, we're actually decreasing the height of the building. As you see, about 4 foot 3 inches, we're lowering it from that gabled house situation that it has. Is going to be built into step down flat roof.
We are reducing it by 1 foot. And then the maximum height is 30 feet, and we are at 25, 9 inches, 4 feet, 3 inches below design guideline heights.
Again, this is a demonstration of the following the principles. Principle 1, cut building into the hillside, terrace the building, follow hillside contours and slope, building forms, particularly roof forms, work with the slopes to minimize environmental disturbance without creating massing. Here is a demonstration of how by getting rid of that gable situation, we're doing stepping down the top roof, and we are not without obstructing the major views of the neighbors, which is Golden Gate Bridge, City of San Francisco, Belvedere Lagoon, Sausalito, Angel Island, and Richardson Bay. That's guideline 3, principle D. Again, this is another angle to that step down roof situation, again, preserving per principle D all the major views that are being enjoyed by the neighbors. One of the notes that we need to make is that the story poles, where you look at the story poles that are existing on the lot, they are showing to the edge of the overhang. They're not showing actually the story poles aren't to the edge of the building. So it's kind of a misleading situation when you look at those story poles. They are beyond the actual new building by about 4 feet on each side. Just a point of clarification here. This is an example of all the houses in our neighborhood that have built over the lot coverage variance and floor area variances. There are a lot of, the lot coverage variance is allowed to 15%, and these homes are built about 17% to 23% above. Also, floor area variances, they've all exceeded. These are a sampling of the houses that have exceeded.
Actually, at 111 Lyford, they have gone over 1,719. And at another one, I can remember, they are over 1,170 something. So we are asking for 390 for variance for floor area and 19% for lot coverage. So we are very much within the range in that neighborhood.
These are the sample of the colors of the exterior of the building. It's very neutral. That's the stucco color, the exterior tile color, and the roof is EPDM, flat roof, no reflection, nothing out of ordinary. These are the signatures of all our neighbors that have approved, supported the project. This is a picture that was taken from 120 Lyford, our neighbor's house, by Sam, the staff member here. And the story poles in the background show that although some of the views in the downtown may have been blocked here, but the major views, again, by guideline 3, principle D, we're not obstructing San Francisco, Golden Gate Bridge, Angel Island, Belvedere Lagoon, Sausalito, Richardson Bay, any of those major viewpoints.
And as you see, the neighbors have planted 30+ evergreen trees on the edge of their own property. So pretty soon they won't see anything
on our property
our
at all.
property.
Yes, they will. Those trees will have to be cut.
They have
But
to
it's
be-
their own trees, they planted that.
This is a picture demonstrating all the houses on that hillside. The arrow shows our house. These are all the houses that, as you see, are following the contour of that hillside, facing the city, facing the views, following the contour, except for our house, which is just pointing, as I said, like a motel, not taking advantage of the hillside contours.
And guideline 3, it allows new dwellings access to views similar to those enjoyed from existing dwellings. So we have been trying to design this, staying within the design guidelines and zoning principles all the way from the beginning. And staff has reviewed our project and they are in supportive of, and they are conformance with development standards for R2 zoning.
This is just basically a summary of all the guidelines that we followed, and just a summary of what we just went through. This is the example of all the homes that have gone beyond the variances in our neighborhood, just a list of them by the numbers. Just at the end, we want to thank you for being able to present to you.
I have a question, Tom. Sorry, because I didn't see that. The number of houses, how many have a variance for lot coverage and an FAR exception, both?
There, it's on there, the 1, 2, 1, 2, and then there's there was another one. Three of the,
111 and 116.
yes, 3, actually the Bartel is
Okay.
the 4 are lot coverage over. And then the square footage is 3.
So
Like
one,
on line 4.
of them have
both.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean which one have both?
Both.
Yeah.
Oh, both,
them.
2 of them.
Okay, thank you.
Great, let's.
So
I just have a free form at this point. Okay.
Please use the mic. This is not getting recorded without it. Thank you.
So on the model, this is existing. I tried to keep the existing, the shell, everything, because I totally believe in not destroying anything and just try to add to existing, and very environmentally concerned about the land, the trees, saving all the materials and all of that. So we only have this narrow view of the magnificent views that everybody else enjoys down whole hill. So we're just adding this section and have stepped it down the roof, so to be considerate to the neighbors. And down below, over 50% of this addition is under the deck. So it's not visible from any neighbors, from street or anything. They're keeping all the garage, all this whole facade, everything. Most of the windows on this side is gonna be closed, only the laundry room and the toilet and the windows going downstairs. And then another major wish list was to keep this back
area that is a garden, keep it. Because we love to have like a yard or some kind of a gardening situation. So it's not all gonna be decking. And so you can see the property all the way, and at the property line setbacks are way above what it should be.
Could you tell me what the materials are on that side of the living room facing Lifer Drive?
This side,
The
Other
other
side,
and from the garage over is gonna be stucco. And then from the front entry and then to this side is gonna be tile.
And that's what kind of tile?
are they gonna be on
Natural.
clips?
Sorry,
They're gonna be on clips? So they'll be on clips.
Oh,
So
I
it's like
see.
a rain screen with the tiles.
yes,
All right.
And what is that material?
this is tile.
What type of tile? What is it
It's an
smooth?
Italian tile, imported from Italy. It's the specs are in there.
Okay.
I had a sample on the deck.
Okay,
It looks like stucco, but it's tile because I wanna bulletproof this property, this home, because maintenance. On this side, we get a lot of sun and wind and rain and all exposed to elements. So most of this is gonna be tile, and then on this side, and then on the other side, it's gonna be stucco and combination of tile and stucco.
okay,
Okay.
great. Let's bring it up to the board and just to deliberate and maybe talk about, and we can engage the applicant. Is there an opportunity for the public to speak at this point? So if there's anybody from the public who'd like to speak, we don't really have guidance on like time limits or anything, but
It's a study session, so there really aren't. I mean, I think that there are a few neighbors that are probably interested, and you can feel at liberty to allow them to speak. We
okay,
don't have a time limit for them, seeing as how this is not a public hearing.
okay. So please come up and state your name and address and feel free to talk. If we can keep the comments to less than, 5 minutes, that would be appreciated. Thanks. Please go forward.
Good evening. My name is George Landau, and I've lived on, and continue to be living at 82 Sugarloaf Drive in Tiburon. So it's further up the hill on the corner of Sugarloaf and Lyford. And I've been there, this will be my 52nd year. I'm here tonight because I'm not involved in either home. I'm not being affected personally. However, during my residency in Tiburon, I've been involved in a number of activities for the betterment of the community. One that I worked on years was the view ordinance. This even predated Scott Anderson and other planners. And the principal thing that we tried to do was to preserve the view. When you bought a house, that was your view. So when I read the last 2 issues of the ARC, and you, Madam Chairman, came out with a statement that the people at 120 didn't buy air rights, I must confess that many years ago, air rights were, in my mind, Pan Am building on top of Grand Central or something like that. We just didn't consider that as a separate item of purchase. But I must tell you that I became a mediator because of the issues involved before this ordinance was passed. And I'm here to say that if a neighbor sees that their view is being affected through construction or growth, that they have the right to come and negotiate. And so I'm hoping that this is what's going to happen here, because otherwise, if you look around Tiburon and other areas, people are putting up second stories, third stories, whatever, and it's going to be a massive problem. I know the original owners of that house never stayed overnight, so I haven't heard the noise of Lyford. But I do know that the views of everyone are very important, and people buy the houses because of the view. And that's what they need to protect. And I'm here on that subject. And that's what I came down to tell you. So I'm hoping that the people at 120 will work out whatever it is to the mutual satisfaction. But when they bought the house, there was no question that they weren't going to go around the house neighborhood and buying up air rights. So that's what got me excited to come down here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we start my time, is it possible just to pull up real quickly the presentation from December that I submitted? Okay, thank you. Maybe for Jim's benefit. Christian Soul. My wife and I own 120 Lyford and 116 Lyford.
Just to make sure I'm pulling up the correct thing, it was the letter that you submitted for the meeting, correct?
Got
With the
slides.
photos?
I think it's titled late email.
Yeah, and it had like the red.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, okay. So if you.
Thank you. If possible, can you go to maybe the third page? Okay. So maybe as a refresher for the first time for Mr. Mallet, this is the view from the dining room, 120 Lyford. You can see the story poles. Yes, we have amazing views. The Golden Gate Bridge, San Francisco, amazing. But you know what? A lot of times that's foggy, and we do appreciate our own views in our own town. St. Hilary's Church, landmark, downtown Tiburon, the Yacht Club. Those are important views in the foreground. And it's not from a bathroom. It's not from the garage. This is from the dining room. So if you go to the next slide, I did my best to, that's the new view. And if you can go to the next slide, please. This is at night. It's nice to see downtown Tiburon. If you go to the next slide, please. It's all blocked. So I think the issue here, if I could stand up, is I think we're in agreement. We both dislike this current house. You dislike it because it's on the road. We dislike it because it's built on the highest point on your lot. And I understand you're trying to continue that main living level, family room, master, and kitchen on that same level as this existing structure. That existing structure is on the highest part of your land, and you're trying to continue over. Obviously, if you had a blank slate, you wouldn't build this current structure here. You would probably, terrace it. We wouldn't even be here discussing this, right? But we're both beholden to this existing structure, which is built in the highest part of the property. And I would argue that you're trying to have it all. You're trying to have a lot area coverage exemption. You're trying to have a square footage exemption. You're trying to not have any stairs. That would just bring this is the structure here. That's of concern. I don't care. We don't care about this. We don't care about this lower level of this, right? That's where the story poles impact us. A couple stairs, lowering this new addition, ceiling heights, as the chair lady said in the last meeting, bring those down a little bit, maybe shrink a little bit the size of these interior spaces. As you offered, maybe get rid of the roof overhang. There's a series, I think, of a little nip and tucks, as Alex said, that would have a pretty big impact. Maybe it's not going to completely save our view, which I acknowledge. We're not going to be able to completely save Hillary's and downtown Tiburon and the yacht club, but there's got to be some compromise here, right? And nothing for a year has been offered. Even tonight, nothing has been offered yet. There's no nip and tucks at all yet to try to compromise here, right? I think they're trying to have it all. And so I would argue, like, I was there today talking to them, like, let's do a little bit here and there, as you offered as well, back it up maybe. Like, let's just figure out something to save, maybe not all of Hillary's Church and downtown Tiburon and Yacht Club, but you can save a lot of it. I don't think it would have a huge impact, and it would save a lot of the value of this house that we bought. As that gentleman said, a lot of the value is in all of the views from the Golden Gate Bridge to San Francisco to Tiburon. Those are all important.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone from the internet who's online like to make a comment?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, at this point then, maybe we can start a dialogue amongst the design review board and offer some suggestions of what that could possibly work, and this sort of giving us an opportunity to sort of not necessarily dictate the design, but offer some ideas. So I'll start off. So one of my suggestions was taking that volume, the new volume, and perhaps tucking it back towards the hillside a little bit more, and perhaps lowering that roof. You know, I understand this stepping. I'm not too keen about it, but also maybe there's a way we can sort of play with the overhangs and maybe push it back a little bit. The other thing that I am concerned about is the materiality of the exterior cladding. I'm having trouble like understanding the tile. Like to me, like tile reads as I just don't see the materiality. It's really hard to sort of see what it is. I don't have a copy or the spec, so that would be really helpful if I could actually see the tangible sort of thing. And I'm sorry.
It's a big size. It's like 24 by 48. So it was really big.
It's just a 2x4 slabs.
So I can bring you small samples,
Yeah.
but it's not going to be an indication of the whole.
No, we can. I mean, I can't call myself an architect. I can't not call myself an architect because I don't have a license, but
We're closed tomorrow, but it's, we'll take it Monday. Would it be helpful to have that as part of the next meeting, to have samples in addition to a materials board?
materials board's always welcome.
Mhm.
It's really, really welcome, especially if it's gonna be completely different cladding, so yeah. So those are my big comments. Anybody else want to sort of take a stab?
Jim, last time we were talking, the big elements of this are, it seemed to be apparent that there's no protection of this view of downtown Tiburon and St. Hilary. And I think there's quite a bit of discussion about that. Is that view protected? And I think the answer is no. The compromise that was discussed then and again tonight really hinges on going from a gable roof to a flat roof and essentially the height of that flat roof. And I think that's where a lot of attention and discussion might want to be. I believe I understand the current gable roof will be dropped less than a foot to create this flat roof that is there now,
You mean the height of it?
the height,
The height.
the peak height. But you're going from a peak height of a gable roof now to a very large flat roof, and if that is a mass and a different value in your view, then I think you're right. I think you want to try to lower the height of that as much as possible, tuck it in the hillside as much as possible, but if you're keeping the same floor level, I don't think you have a lot of room. You might be able to go from 11-foot ceiling to a 10-foot ceiling, but I would certainly like to hear some of the other members discuss really those two issues. My understanding is we do not have to protect that downtown Tiburon view, and is there a way to lower the mass effect and the height of the new flat roof that will be replacing the gable roof?
Can I just make a comment just to clarify my position? It's not that it's not protected because of the guidelines and, the guidelines don't allow for that protection. I just I don't believe in absolutes. So like to say like that it has to be protected or it doesn't have to be protected, I sort of don't operate in those margins. I think it's somewhere in between. Like, is there a way that can mitigate some of the lost view while also allowing this landowner to also maximize their view as well? So that's, I just want to clarify that. I think the ARC had portrayed my position incorrectly, saying that I don't believe in air rights. I find that a really a big misquote there. But yeah, no, I don't believe in the extremes. So I think there is some level of like, is there an opportunity that could benefit both? I hope that makes sense.
It does, which is a good segue for me to go into. I will say I'm encouraged that some of the words Christian said in that he understands there's concessions and there's going to be some negative impacts on his property, and now it's all about moving forward in a solution and figuring out to exactly what you said. How do we minimize them while not being overly punitive on the applicant? My suggestion or kind of path forward is looking at different viewpoints of the house, because when I was in that house, there are certain
house?
of 120.
Okay.
When I was in the house, there are certain, I go in different rooms, I stand up at the window, I sit down on the couch, I take pictures. There are some viewpoints and windows which it doesn't matter if you lower the house 5 feet, there's still going to be obstruction. But there's some windows where it's like, and my biggest one is it's when you're standing in the kitchen and one of the windows, it's not actually a view blockage as much as it is a mass. There's just now you have an open space and then you just see now a building. And I think there are, if we pick okay, what's a reasonable viewpoint to save? I think there are viewpoints to save. Let's tackle those. Are there reasonable solutions that we get into this nip and tuck kind of lingo that I think can make a big impact on certain viewpoints from 116 without doing like massive overhaul to try and kind of improve. You don't want to improve. I don't think we're going to be able to improve all the view, like every view marginally. I think we choose like, let's save this view and this view is going to have some impact. And I think that'll be a better outcome for both and more realistic is kind of the attitude that I have, or the approach, I think.
Say something? The view kitchen is way back in the back. The kitchen is is behind the living.
Which kitchen of the,
No, I'm sorry, the neighbor's Christian's kitchen.
Yeah, way back.
he meant the dining space.
No, well, it's
It's
the,
behind the living dining family.
all, yeah, all,
Behind the entry. That picture.
So we can make
sure.
Thank you. I can't hear offline here.
Sorry.
I'll ask the chair.
The kitchen that you are talking about, the view of the kitchen, the kitchen is way back in the property. It's not the main living room, dining room. The picture that we presented to you, the views from, was the one that Sam and Digna took from their main living spaces at 5 feet 3 inch high.
She's just saying that the kitchen isn't along that wall. Of that
It's
building.
in the
Kitchen's
back.
actually back. Location of the kitchen.
It's way back.
I could be wrong, maybe.
It's a dining space, yeah.
I believe I was there's a counter, like.
It's behind, it's behind the entry. It's way back.
I'm talking-
It's not in the main,
That's the dining area.
But I think I'm standing on is there a counter? Is there like a counter in between the two?
Is that room from kitchen is right behind that.
And there's like a countertop. Yeah. This is from the island, I think. Countertop.
Yeah, so that's embedded further inside.
way back.
It's not against that window wall, that's all
Yeah,
she's saying, is that the
yes.
kitchen isn't. If the building, if this is their property right here and the building is right here, that other building that's being impacted, the kitchen is actually back
Up there.
here.
Yes.
It's
So
not,
how-
it's not along that window wall, that's all she's saying.
So how far back do you want
Yeah.
to go? Of course, the further back you go, the less you can see. It's.
Yeah, I agree. It's actually the smallest, I guess what I'm saying is. It's actually the smallest amount of new building you see from all of these pictures. But it's actually a pretty, in my opinion, when I was there, if I owned that house. That was like almost the biggest offender because you see nothing. You see no buildings from that vantage point, and it's an important vantage point. And all of a sudden you see 6 feet of mess, right?
Yeah,
And
but the further you go back in that building, you're
Yeah.
gonna see a lot more impact. Right? Because if you're in this building right here and you're further back, you're gonna see a lot more of this building, right? If you're in this is the proposed building and this is the building that's existing. The kitchen is back here, so the further you get back, you're gonna see a lot more of this.
no, it depends on what window you're looking at, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
yeah.
angle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is back to this nip and tuck, like. If that one, like, if there was a solution where it's like, okay, that mass is no longer there, you've actually preserved fully. In a pretty important vantage point. That went from like, I make this comment before, but if the view right now from that vantage point is 100. And your new building, it takes it down to a 40 or a 30. You could bring that back to 100. And that could have a lot of value. And we know that in other instances from the dining room or from the sitting on the couch, you may have gone from 100 to 70, and we physically can't go above 75 because we'd have to make you tear down the house, which we've already said we don't believe is the path. So I go back to, and maybe it would be helpful to hear an articulation maybe from Christian. It seems like Christian knows what to maybe from that standpoint where you mentioned a nip and tuck, like where do you see the potential for certain areas where you could see a little you get a big ROI for a change, I guess.
Well, I think we have Jim here and I are both designers and we have particular ideas of the massing and how that both can win, both parties can win. And so, Jim, I take it to you, but my general idea is based on the design guidelines, which is follow the contour of the slopes.
Yeah, I've been listening to this and I'm kind of confused myself because of, here's my first reaction. When I drove up Lyford Drive and I saw the story poles of that corner of the building that you see from the downhill corner of facing Lyford, it's so massive, such a big block, and so heavy, and so close to Lyford Drive. All of that to me just says it's poorly sited, wrong location, wrong forms. And when you say it's going to have a light colored tile on it, forget it. Your house will stand out like a searchlight on the hillside, and I'd rather see it be dark or medium dark at the very least. I looked at the house from the standpoint of not saving it, not trying to use every little piece of it and save money, but push it into the ground. You have so much good topography on your site here that you can deal with. And actually, by pushing it down, you would get a great 4-yard on the Lyford Drive side that would give you a buffer if you pulled the house back this way and squished it. I'm looking at this corner down here and I see 10 feet above grade on the downhill corner of a void that you're not going to use in the house. That doesn't make sense to me. You've also got all glass, as though there was nothing else to work with in the builder's vocabulary. But I know you're going to need shear walls and steel and a lot of other stuff in there. The house can't look like that on the downhill side. And it needs to have the L-shape upper floor that you developed is possibly something you could maintain, but it needs to go down a story onto the site. You won't lose any view by sliding your house downhill.
I'm gonna pay for this, Jim.
That house is totaled, whether you think so or not, because you can't use the existing foundations to build other stuff on it anymore. The code isn't going to do that.
We are not building on it, we are adding to it.
That's not what I see by looking at your plans.
Nothing
And-
is changing that house. We're keeping the shell, we're keeping the foundation. It's a very solid house. We're not gonna push it down because we are not gonna go and go to that part.
Well,
That house is there, whether you like it or whatever you.
well, you can say that, but I wouldn't vote for it in its present condition. So I'm just telling you what I think you need to do with this house.
Condition is already existing.
Well, I'm sorry, in its present design, the present design you have here. I do not see this as being.
The present condition is already there. You cannot force us to push our home down to the ground by one whole story. You cannot force us to demo our house. This is
I
our
can't force you to do
home.
anything. You
This
have to
is
do
our
whatever you
home.
decide to do.
The whole design of this house, this addition has been based on design guideline and zoning.
Well, having I wrote
followed-
the design guidelines, and I know this doesn't meet them in
It
many
does-
respects.
it-
It meets them in some respects, but you don't cherry pick the design guidelines.
I have gone through every single design guideline
Fine.
and have checked the boxes. And we are not pushing this house down by one whole story
Well, then-
unless
then
you're
I-
gonna be willing to pay for the cost of
I'm
the
sorry.
demo.
This is
and the
getting
footing.
silly. There's no point in me talking to you if you're not listening, and I think that you actually came here to try to get an approval from us, but I don't see it in this house. This is a very blocky, rather undistinguished house that just happens to have a lot of glass in it. So much glass that you'll have a trouble air conditioning that house. So I'm looking at it and saying, I think you need to start over on the design and respect your uphill neighbors a little more. We had one other brief discussion about trees. Any trees that you plant on this property should be limited at the height of the building. In other words, prune them to the height of the building. So that's another condition you ought to deal with.
We haven't planted any trees.
Fine.
The
I can
neighbors,
tell that.
the neighbors
Yeah.
have planted the
Okay.
trees. We haven't planted.
Well, you've got
any
a great
trees.
site.
And the
Agree.
grass is very common on the hillside. The 108 that is being built right now is 100% glass. These are very specific glasses that can weather all the
I'm an
elements.
architect. I know how to design a house. So I'm,
Okay, so am I. So you're insulting me here right
I
now.
apologize.
It's getting quite personal. Let's
Yeah.
not make this personal. Let's try to make this just constructive and see if we can get to a place where, you know, we can get to a place where we can find some ideas or principles that we can sort of convey onto you that that could be constructive. I do, there is that one corner right there that I see like an entire story that could be built on. That's something problematic for me
But
because
that corner was gonna be, we're gonna terrace it.
Where are you talking about?
Is this corner you're talking about?
Nushin, do you mind grabbing the mic? Sorry, you can bring it with you, just so we can hear it. Thank you.
Is this the corner you're talking? about?
yeah, I mean, I
That,
just.
that I was gonna, terrace it down with landscaping, not landscaping, like with plantations and vegetations and vegetable gardens and things like that.
Suzanne, you're suggesting when you say you can see that, it would require steps in the, is that what you're suggesting, that you lower?
No, I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just making an observation that it's really high up there. Because it's not following the contours of the
See,
building,
this is
of the
where,
landscape. That's why. It's a remnant of not following the of the
see, this
contour.
is where I've tried to follow the contour. And only at this corner is where the landscape, the land goes steep.
What if?
That's here is where I was.
Sure, I think we're in a position right now where you're trying to defend your design. It's not gonna pass the way it is. So what we want to do to be more constructive is let's offer some ideas of what we could do to tweak it so that it could actually move along, because I think we have to sort of take a reset right now and like we just need to think about what the purpose of this design session. It's not for you to defend your design because we've already concluded that it's not going to pass as it is. So maybe we can offer some ideas that to explore
We're here.
and see if that could help. Yeah.
Yes, we're here to listen.
So I agree with that. I want to address one. I do want to kind of, because we last left it with I think Jim's comments, which I respect very much. However, I think your comments, Jim, are very valid looking at the project independently. I think where I'm struggling with kind of the forcing of conforming a bit more to the hillside is I stare at that hill my kitchen window stares at Lightfoot Hill. All the houses there like are huge and don't follow the guidelines. You're in a sea of non-conforming houses, and the houses are huge, they're wide, they're all blocky. So I hesitate to force, especially if there is, say it again, a nip and tuck solution where the uphill neighbor's happy with it. I worry a little bit about forcing a redesign specifically for the hillside guidelines.
I'm not doing that.
What I'm
I'm not doing that. What I'm suggesting is that whether they like it or not, I have remodeled maybe 400 houses in Marin County. And I know at a certain point, when you get to the point where you're starting to tear down more and more and more of the house, first of all, the house won't, it's no longer a new, a remodel. And secondly, the foundations don't work anymore because your point loads come down in different places and all your entire foundation is mistaken. This house is at that point, it's beyond it. This is a house that needs a total new structural engineering on it. And I'm just trying to point out that triggers
Yeah.
the ability to change the siting of the house if you're gonna do it at all.
Okay, so you're suggesting a recite. There must be something in between where we can talk
I
about
don't-
something. Can I offer a suggestion? I don't have maybe I can borrow your mic.
How about, if I move this whole thing 4 feet over? And then move this 4 feet to the backside and then 4 feet. And then this whole thing 4 feet under.
Can I suggest something? Okay, now we have a volume that's an L. I'm let's just see if we could try something else. One idea that I was having, I'm sorry, I hurt my ribs. I might have broken it, so I'm having a little bit of problems, but, this portion here, this whole here is based on an orthogonality that's based on the existing building. What if we take this portion right here, angled it this way? It would conform a little bit better to the contours. It would start allowing it would still define a courtyard space that you sort of desired. It would sort of conform better with this hillside, the direction of the contours. This is a totally different structure. And because it tucks into the side, into the hillside, that would actually preserve some of the view concerns of the uphill neighbor. Does that make sense? By just angling it this way, what happens? There's this little overhang here is perceived much less, I think.
I love that. I think it's brilliant.
And if
Just-
I love that idea. I think it's brilliant. It's only 10 feet, so it will be at 9 feet. How much is that gonna give? How much view are they gonna give?
Jim, can you turn on your mic, please? Thank you.
Every foot counts, and if you nibble at both the height of the building and settling it down another 2 or 3 feet, you start to make a huge difference in the uphill viewing plane.
I'm gonna start with angling it, and I really love, that's brilliant, Suzanne. It's brilliant, because,
Don't you think that could work?
yes.
I don't think it'll make much difference.
You don't think so?
No, but I don't.
I think it
I-
does make a big.
I like seeing angles on buildings that are not orthogonal. So go for it.
So, but you just said it wouldn't help.
You don't like angles?
I
What
do
did you
like
say?
I said the angles won't help in this case.
I
Just
think-
angling the house, angling the building won't help the view uphill
It-
appreciably.
If it takes us
This-
back by this much, it
Yeah,
will help tremendously.
Jim, maybe I can show you some pictures. I actually think. Right?
Yeah.
I do think if you angle it back and lower it a foot, it's a bedroom. It's still 9-foot bedroom. You do two things. You preserve two views. One is if you're in the living room or family room sitting down, I don't think you'll see the roof. I think you will see all water, and I don't think you'll see an interruption of a roof. And then I do think you might be able to, from that kitchen window, if you're pushing it back an angle, come in, I still think you could come in a little bit. I think those two views would potentially be preserved, and I think that's a good compromise from a view perspective uphill.
I don't know, sorry,
It's just saying.
and there's
this
also.
corner Angular.
That's where they should be going.
Angular.
They should be going down underneath the house and cutting it into the hillside rather than. See, everything in this house is balanced on top of the slope. When you have a sloping hillside, you need to cut in and up and in and up. So you need to use the ground. You're not using the ground here on any of this addition work coming out. You're just balancing it on top of the existing.
talking about slanting this whole thing.
The ring.
Jim, may I ask you a question? Are you
No, not no.
seeing
No.
a two-story house
You
that
have
basically just sits lower
I
than
get
this
it.
is now?
It
I'm
puts
seeing
back
two
and forth.
stories offset, each dug into the
See
hillside.
this
The
angle.
uphill one
So
probably
give them
having
more
maybe a
views.
4-foot retaining wall,
Mhm.
which would be a full story lower than what you have here. And the next one cut into the hillside.
But they wanna keep
All-
that one story though.
Yeah.
All of this area that goes out into the, it's not part of the existing building. If you cut that into the hillside, whether it's angled or not, you would end up with it being a full story lower. And it would then allow more views from the primary element of the house, which is the large back part of it.
Design guideline says that we have the same right as everybody else on the hillside.
I
to the
agree with that
same
100%.
Views. Okay, you saw the pictures of the whole hillside, and our house is this tiny house amongst all these humongous homes. This is the only view we get from this site. So that's all right with design guidelines. And then secondly, we are not obstructing the neighbors' major views. All of their major views are intact. Those are all the design, every single page you read, it's been documented in my presentation. So you can't have different rules for different people.
I'm not. I agree with that.
If you agree with me, so we have the right to the same views as everybody else on that hillside. And we are not obstructing the neighbor's major views. If that's the only issue here, as far as the structure, footing, construction, all of that, that's the next phase. That's up to our design. That's up to our structural designer to design it however way it fits. But you at this stage telling us that this is an obsolete because we are just changing some interior walls, it's not going to fly. We're just adding to existing. The foundation, the footing is 50 years old. The furnace is 50 years old and is still functioning like a charm. So this house is on solid grounds. By adding a wing to it, it has nothing to do with what we are going to, affecting the existing. They'll tie to it. So that's as far as the structural design and footing and foundation is concerned. So those are the main things. And all we are trying to do is make this house functional. Not have the laundry room and the toilet and the storage on the garden side. And I don't know what George was talking about. He slept in those bedrooms. I'll invite him to come. Maybe he was deaf or something. That he doesn't, we're literally on the street. We're literally on life.
I do share your principle and this idea of aging in place. I mean, I think this is something that's I'm living with every single day. It's just like, I do respect that, so.
Actually, today is my mom's fourth memorial. She passed 4 years ago today. And she ended up in an institution because she couldn't go up and down her house.
Yeah,
And we're
so,
all there and everybody gets old. And I'm sure one
Yes,
day
yeah.
Christian and Reen will get to our point.
yeah, so I
So
think there is a design out there where we don't have to necessarily raise everything to the ground. But, and we're not saying that, you know, by changing this or that, you're gonna lose things, but you know, I think there could be a win-win for each case, and we're just trying to figure that out.
I actually love your proposal and I'm gonna play with that because it will just give a big chunk of that roof. It will put it in an angle.
Sorry, you had a comment? Do you have an idea?
Just some different thoughts, random thoughts. I get one floor aging in place, but your garage is on a lower level. And every time you come and go from the house, you have to walk from the garage upstairs, right? So the house is already not conducive to aging in place. And if you're able to go from the garage and walk up however many flights of stairs it is, the main living space, I would argue you could walk down a few stairs to get into this new space. One maybe crazy idea is why not, I think was what Jim was saying, why not? You're adding a lot of space, which we have an issue with. On this, I'll call it the upper level. Why not build out, which I think is what Jim was saying, on this lower level? Just change the design entirely. You don't need to change this existing structure, but add your master bedroom, your kitchen, your family room down here. Use all this space. Right? And then you won't have to walk from the garage upstairs. You don't want to walk stairs. Put the main living space on the same level as the garage.
We won't be going from the garage to the main floor. We'll be going from the street. There's a path of travel. So most likely we'll be dropped off at the path. At this path, going to the house.
But you have to
We
go up
won't-
steps, you have to go up steps.
There's 3 steps, you can always put a ramp on that steps. This is the whole thing, because you can be dropped off here and just go to the main house. And then having bedrooms and the kitchen down below and living room up above. As far as the circulation is concerned, that's like really, really.
I think a couple of things, and I do think I would like to ask Suzanne, I'm curious, since she loves the idea of making the house at an angle, what impact do you think that will have on the different vantage points and views of the uphill neighbor? So that's one question.
You'll see less roof.
Sorry,
I think you'll see less roof.
significant.
Like, we talked about cutting back.
Sorry. Let me rephrase. More precise, like how much impact? I know what the impact will be, but do you think that will be a significant positive impact? Will that be on the margins? Jim thinks it might be on the margins, so.
I think it's gonna be in the margins. I mean, it's not as big as raising it. I think, well, let me take a step back. I just want to address what Jim was suggesting about the existing milling. He wasn't saying you have to raise it. He was just saying, well, you're already changing the roof line. You're already changing some of the structural loading there. And because of that, it may require rethinking about, it may require an engineering feat to preserve the existing foundation. I think that's where his comment was. It wasn't saying like, oh, you have to start over. he's saying, well, we're already changing the loading on that floor, so that may already sort of make it more difficult to preserve that foundation. That's what, I think that's how I would characterize what you were saying, right?
Actually, what we're proposing is going to be a lot of unloading. A lot of these interior silly walls are coming out. And it's going to be a lot less load. It's going to be so much.
It's gonna be
lighter.
loading of vertical loads, right? What
Yeah.
Jim was saying though is, as a result, you may inadvertently be increasing the lateral loads in certain areas.
Engineers will actually on the street side,
Uh-huh,
it's going to be a lot less glass. So it's going to be more.
that's gonna be more of the shear wall.
Right, and then on this other side also. So, and then right in the middle of the whole living room, between the kitchen and the entry, there's that big, huge solid wall. I mean, right now, I'm not qualified to resolve structural issues, but there are these windows that on Old Tiburon House that they've done. They are the overhang.
They're a moment frame. It's a moment
Yes.
frame.
Could
Yeah.
I ask?
I mean,
May I ask one question? I'm looking at your floor plan, and on the page A101 is the existing building, and you have a dimension down here of 32 feet, 4.5 inches, which is the width of your present living room. And then I scaled off of that for your next sheet over, and I got 42 feet. So you've added 10 feet, which means the loads from the roof are coming down 10 feet off of where the loads are now. That's the kind of thing I'm saying. You're not honoring the structure of the existing building, and that means you're gonna have to build new foundations. I'm sorry.
it will be resolved.
Okay.
Qualified engineer. There will be a qualified engineer designing the structure
Okay.
when we are done with planning.
Yeah,
But-
but he's just saying that because you're already moving it 10 feet, you may be already violating this preserve the foundation. That's all he's just trying to say. It's like, well, you might be already,
It's 4 feet.
it's 4 feet.
Yes,
It's not 10 feet.
it's
Okay.
not.
That's still significant. I mean, 4 feet is pretty,
That's what. no,
But I don't, but that's underground and I don't know what we're discussing here.
Well, I think maybe Jim wasn't here when I asked the initial question that maybe confused people, but I was generally curious what the savings, the cost savings are for preserving this house. And it sounds like, Jim, your opinion is
Well-
very little.
I've specialized more in remodeling than in new construction. But I've run across at least a dozen projects in my life where the scope of what you're trying to do just doesn't match up with what the existing foundations are. And the code has changed every 3 years since this house was built. I
Yeah.
don't know when this house was originally built, 65 maybe?
Yes.
Okay, well then, the entire seismic upgrade of in our present buildings is so much stronger than what your house is, that there's nothing in your foundation that will qualify. It just doesn't work that way. And when you rebuild a house, you're required, if it's more than 25% of the house is affected, and in this case, it's 100%. If it's more than 25%, you're required to bring the entire house up to modern seismic codes, period.
We have all the intentions to do.
Okay. Enough said.
But
I'm not gonna fight anymore.
Well, I think maybe, and correct me if I don't wanna, if this is not what you're saying, but I think maybe what I interpret out of that is, it's not that you don't have plans to get it upgraded, like we know you will. It's more, you start weighing the cost of that versus the cost of the tear down, and what the assumption right now is if we're gonna preserve half the house and do an addition, and maybe it's not, I mean, it's just from my seat, it's okay, well, the addition is gonna cost a lot. It's gonna be more economic just to do the addition versus tearing down, which is a much larger expense. But maybe that gap shortens and shortens and shortens because of the upgrades, because of things that, you know, you realize, oh, we have to redo the foundation and we have to make all these changes, then that gap goes like from here to here. And at this point, it's like, well, we should have just redone the house from scratch because we can solve a bunch of problems. And now you're actually starting with a clean slate and starting versus having to add on from the existing house. And I'm not advocating, I will say right now, I'm not advocating for that plan. I'm just saying it sounds like the gap, which may have thought to be here, might actually be here. I'm not in a position to say if it's here or here, but it's something worth thinking about and putting, you know, pen to paper a little bit, because maybe that is the case. And then the changes become a little more dramatic, which you know, Jim has recommended. So I think that's how I interpret maybe that discussion. I don't know, Jim, if that's the direction you were going, but.
That's definitely the direction I'm going.
Yeah, that's what, that, I think that I understand. So, I mean, there is a cost benefit. And maybe what we're saying is maybe try to free your mind a little bit, and maybe there's another, maybe there is something that's much more cost effective that could be a win-win for everybody.
I your solution, and I would like to approach that. Tearing this down and lowering it by one whole story is out of question. It's not gonna happen. As far as the future structural, mechanical, plumbing, all of that stuff comes later. And this is one man's opinion. And I myself have been doing this for 40+ years. And I don't agree with Jim Mallett. So is this a matter of opinion, or are we here to talk about design guidelines and zoning? What are we doing here? I'm confused. What are we doing here?
What we hear are
This is-
try to
the-
find a solution that the board could come around to an idea or here's the thing about the guidelines. If you follow all the guidelines and you follow the rules, it will not necessarily mean that it'll pass design review board. We've seen this time and time again, like you think you've followed all those things, not necessarily true. If you're asking for a variance, it's getting harder and harder to ask for variances. I mean, Sam knows it's that you have a higher threshold now to pass that. The question that we're trying to get to is, yes, you have a right to build as you please. But you don't live in a void, right? This building is not a void, and you acknowledge that there's gonna be impacts to others. Is there a building that can be built that is cost effective, is the building that you want, that is integrated into the community, and also it's something that's desirable with your neighbors, you know? It doesn't necessarily have to be all your neighbors, doesn't even have to do that, but you'd probably be happier if there's less contention in your community.
This is our home. We live here.
Yeah.
It's
But
really important to us.
Yes. So our role isn't to tell you how to do it, because that's very prescriptive. Our role is more to sort of guide you as to some ideas that you might pursue that could be a win-win. I don't know. Is that what our mission is?
In general or for the session?
In general,
Yeah.
in general. Yeah, so it's interesting. We've had, I don't know how many buildings that we've gone through here. And I see some of these being built where, you know, we asked them to push it down, the building into more into the hillside. And I drive by those buildings and like you could barely see them from the street, like you could barely see the impact. But now they have the whole hillside to make this incredible view. And I can name off a bunch of them actually. It was incredible. Like everyone loves them. Like the impact on the neighbors is minimal, but they were able to successfully use the site and get these grand views. They were all tabula rasas, so they all started from scratch. Like nobody really wanted to start with an existing building, so it's a challenge. Like if something's got to give, and I'm just here to just provide you with, try to open your mind and see if there's something that could work for everybody.
Believe me, I've started, I mean, this is not, you see the final process of what I've gone through for 6 months, trying to be respectful to our lifestyle.
Sure.
And the neighbor's view.
Sure.
Those have been my two major issues that I've been tackling. This is not my first. Okay,
Of
so
course,
I've gone
of course.
through a huge process of, I have 15 alternatives.
I'm sure you have way
To
more
get
than that, yeah.
To get to this point, shrinking from each side, pushing it back from each side to be considerate to the neighbors. There's another thing I was thinking.
I think the hardest design to me, the hardest design for me is my personal house. That's the hardest challenge.
I'm very logical,
Yeah.
I've always been very logical and problem solver all my life. I can move this whole section by 4 feet back and move the toilet, the bedroom here. This whole thing will go back by 4 feet, and the overhang is 4 feet, cut 1 foot off. So it'll be 5 feet back. And then here, swap the toilet and the second bedroom.
That's actually huge. 5 foot, a 5 foot pushback. I mean, you would agree, right? 5 foot back from that front edge is huge.
Right.
That's pretty massive.
And then under here, I'll go back 4 feet under also. So at this point, I'll go 4 feet back. Angling it, I'm gonna play with that. I really love that idea.
It's just an idea, but I'm not wedded to it. I'm just trying to throw out something, but 5 feet back, that's pretty big.
5 feet back where? Which room?
From that front face, of that eave, all the way
here,
back.
Just go back.
Yeah.
That's huge.
1 foot from the overhang and then 4 feet of space.
Yeah. That's huge.
I'm still gonna see this massive structure, right? Just to be actually closer.
Yes, but you'll be able to possibly see downtown.
Yes,
Yes.
but
About 4 inches more horizontally is my estimate from.
Jim, can you put your mic on? I want to make sure we get your comments. Thank
5
you.
feet horizontally at that degree of slope is maybe 6 inches is what you're going to change. It's something, but it would be a lot easier to just push the building into the ground that dimension, or a foot, or 2 feet, or 3 feet.
that's 100% my vote, is just to see less of this. View perspective, when you drive down the driveway, it's just a huge structure built at the highest point of the lot.
Did you think of sloping the,
I was
Roof.
thinking of sloping it the other way, because if you slope it this way, you're blocking your view. It
you're
defeats
not
the purpose.
sloping it downhill, you're giving yourself better sunscreen.
Yeah, but you're cutting off your views.
No, you're cutting off sky, not the not anything below anything from the horizon down or even the horizon.
Right, but back here is a closet and stuff like that, and this is where the views are.
I'm saying slope it downhill.
This way, right?
Yes,
This way.
not that steep, just 1 and 12.
I know, so that's gonna cut back into the whole. I can do that.
Lead a horse to water.
But I don't know if that's gonna do.
I can do it, but.
Whoa. I still think I like I would be interested in seeing a revive. I know this is hard to do from a story pulse perspective, but just I would be interested in the view impact of the angled adjustment and the master bedroom 6 inches to a foot lower. Because it's 10 feet right now, right? So 6 inches is 12 feet. And I'll say this again. I do think also bringing the house in a couple feet.
What do you mean
Width.
by
Here's my
where is in?
here's my my
Can
very
you show
transparent.
it? I don't understand
Oh,
what
yeah.
you're saying.
You need
I
to,
need a mic.
Where is in?
So
it's getting late, but we should try to figure out, I think.
yeah. Oh,
Make your comment, and I think what we should do is go around and give you an idea of not our ideas of the design changes that we would agree with, but maybe give you an idea what we find could possibly pass. Would help us. I mean, Jim, do you think you could articulate something that could help us help her understand what could possibly pass for your design review?
You want me to start?
What,
Oh,
no,
wait, he has to finish his comment. Yeah.
so
In from where?
from the width of
Show which wall.
It's really the wall, I don't know what, your bathroom wall, because the reason why I say this, if you angle it and bring it in,
Explore that.
because, and,
I'm gonna explore that.
okay, the angle and bringing it in, because I think that then, okay.
Because that angling and all of those angles are
Yeah.
gonna, I don't know how it's gonna affect.
the
And
floor.
everything, it's good, but I love that concept, that idea.
Because it comes out, but then it comes in.
Yeah.
I think the window, I think it actually could preserve a couple of the vantage points and important vantage points.
Just this portion or the whole portion?
I kind of see like you shift, because I look at, 19.5 foot family room and 16.5 foot dining room and 15.5 foot master. So it's like you just,
want to take this whole thing and shift it?
yeah, but then you can bring it and potentially give it, it does change the floor plan, but originally before the angle suggestion, it was just move this like to here and you shave off a few feet from, it's up to you from the floor plan.
It's gonna help it.
I think it's gonna
Just
help.
1 minute, I can't hear Nushin very well at all, so
Oh.
we're gonna need that,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
I think it helps this view, which is from the countertop, which you just see a mass just now coming in.
Okay,
and
I
it
can,
is
I can
this
bring
part.
that couple feet or whatever. Just bring like.
I don't know if it's a silver
Which-
bullet, but I see
So
this.
you're giving an idea,
Yeah.
but the goal that you want to achieve is that you want to see less building in the foreground and the view. That's the principle that's the goal that you want to see.
For me,
Yes. So how you get there, this is just one idea, but what you want to see is less foreground of the building in the neighbor's view.
yeah.
Thank you. It was raised in the last meeting and I didn't appreciate it until I think you raised it, Suzanne. There's a lot of glazing on this side, right? So whatever we agreed to with roof heights, helping the views, I appreciate. But the family room and the kitchen are right there and there's a lot of glazing, right? And those are probably the first lights on in the morning, probably the last lights off in the evening that are on the right side of the house that are impacting 120 as well. Right, and you raised that in your comments, that's a lot of glazing. So I don't, it'd be one thing just to get rid of the glazing, but how that impacts the design, that'd be that's an issue for us as well. Because I recognize we're not gonna eliminate this thing entirely. Hopefully we can reduce it, help the views, but if this side is all glazing, then that, you raised that as a huge issue for 120.
That side is not all glazing. This whole part of it is wall. And yeah, you wanna have windows for the kitchen, and they have 30 evergreens built here. There's no way
Those don't help.
they can see anything into this area. They have trees that they built in there.
I do think that the change of the angle does change then you're looking at, like, that may solve that problem as well. I think we need to get to what you're trying to say is what we want to see come back from an impact standpoint on both the neighbor and some other issues.
It's not that for me, it's less so that we're blocking the town of Tiburon. For me, the biggest impact is now when they look out, they just see roof. To me, that's probably the more difficult part. Like, they see a lot of building.
Yes, but we are not their park. We have the right. You
have the right to build it, but they will.
Even if we go one whole story low, they're still gonna see a roof.
You're gonna see roof. I'm not saying that you can eliminate it. I'm just saying maybe there's a solution that can lessen that a little bit. That's all.
Right.
That's
Yes,
for me,
and
that's for me, that's my preference, is to see a little less. When you look out, like, I remember, I guess none of you were on the board, Brian was on, there was a building and all of a sudden this new building came up. It didn't block the primary issues. Like, you can see Richardson Bay, you can see Sausalito or across the bay. But now, like, half the view was blocked by a roof. Like, you can still see Richardson Bay, but then it's just like, you look outside and you're like, whoa, it's just a building. We asked the applicant to come back, and I think it was a Michael Heckman design, and it got pushed down, and everyone won. They still got the view, the applicant still got the views of Richardson Bay that they wanted, but the neighbor up there didn't get like 40% of their view obstructed by a roof. That was an interesting.
Was it the one on Virginia? Maybe I'm way off.
I don't know which street it was on, but yeah, I think it was Heckman.
Okay. Cause I'm also happy to, if, I mean, I don't know if this is the time to do it, but if there are other examples of modifications they made, maybe we can.
Then there's the one next to on the way to Mountain View.
1807 Lagoon View Drive.
Is that what
Oh,
it is?
yeah.
They just finished building that one?
No, it approved, they pushed it down and into the hill, but I mean, you do have to weigh, that view obstruction was much worse.
I'm not talking about that one. It was the heck, that one's great too, but yeah, the one, it's a flat street. There's houses on this side, it was houses on this side. And I can't remember what street. Anyway, we should tie it up, but let's go around and just give.
One thing I'd like to point out is the roof will always be a problem.
Yes.
So one of the design elements that I think should be addressed is making variegated or different level roofs with clear stories between them or not, but roofs that do something other than just act like a sea of asphalt in front of the views of the uphill neighbors. So when you're doing this 1 foot step down, 1 foot step down, that's not enough. That's not going to that doesn't change the character of the roof from uphill. So think in terms of dramatic changes in the roof lines. And I would, for one, say that you should definitely start carving that building into the hillside so that you have steps with the ground, not cantilevered out over the ground. Those are just two design concepts. I'm not going to go into any more about what you should or shouldn't do with regard to the building itself. I just, I think you're going to have to come back with something that's more appealing visually and less intrusive for your uphill neighbors. And you have a big lot to work with. Okay.
I said a lot today, so I'm trying to figure out how to summarize it.
Jim, do you want to go?
Yeah, Jim, go first.
It's a significant mass. And we've talked about sort of nips and tucks. That when you do the mathematics of that, you really are talking about a few inches here and a few inches there. And I think the solution is probably something much more dramatic. And I hate to say it, but I do think you have to consider repositioning the house dramatically into the hillside. Or you take the argument that, nope, we're following all the guidelines. Uphill people will just have to accept it and you pass what's there right now, and no one's going to do that. So I think it's a dramatic difference of either that design or something that fits into the hillside that really does have a counterbalance to what we're seeing tonight. You've got to get rid of that roof. You've got to preserve some of these views. You've got to have it have a lot less impact. And the small solutions that we've talked about tonight, angulations, moving back 4 feet, that's not the answer.
I think the easiest thing to do first is truly, as best you can, explore if it is motivated by cost savings, the true cost savings of keeping the existing home versus demoing it. And because I think that will be a very important data point for you to make your design decision. I personally do not feel that we should force people to digging into the hill is very expensive. And I don't think that is has to be our mandate, right? Like, I just don't believe that it's, oh, if you want a new house, if you want a new change, you've got to carve into the hill and it's going to cost 7 figures just to lay foundation. I don't think that is right. But I think which way you go, if it says the savings are so much to keep the existing house, then explore the concessions that you will have to make on the design to do so to mitigate the impact on the uphill neighbor. And I also think exploring design that I think there is a difference in my opinion of, say you impact 4 views and you do some design changes to make each of those 4 views slightly better versus, okay, we saved 2 views and then 2 other views are worse. Like, it's not an absolute, like, you have to improve all the views. It's a balance. It is a balance. And I think exploring what is the best, going into the neighbor's house saying, okay, what is the best I can do on making great strides in preserving some views versus it's much harder to try and solve all the view problems, right? And we all know that there's going to be some concessions, but it's figuring out where the changes will have the most impact and trying to make that most impact, I think is maybe the guidance that I would give in evaluating the next step.
I think we've offered a lot of ideas how to get there. Take it or leave it. But I think the big message, I think, coming from all of us is that the impact on the uphill neighbor is significant. And it's not because of the view blockage, but it's also, it's the presence of the mass in their view. That's probably the bigger impact. And we're not saying it has to be gone to zero. We're just saying it needs to be meaningfully mitigated. Not to zero, we're not saying zero, but there's probably somewhere in between, like the uphill neighbor has to concede that there's gonna be a new view. They have to recognize that, but there's probably somewhere in between that could work for both. And I think there is a solution that could be a win-win. So I think the design as is wouldn't pass, that's clear. But maybe there's something else that you can think of, and it's a painful thing. I think it's hard to design your own home. That's the hardest design challenge ever. Because it's so personal and you put so much into it. But if you could try to take a step back and see what could possibly work, and maybe the preservation of this is something you should maybe research and see. Are you really saving that much more money? I don't know. It's hard. The cost of construction is ridiculous right now. It's insane. Whether it's preserving or new build, often, to be honest, I've seen quotes on renovations that the dollar per square footage is actually higher than new builds. It's really insane, but just to open your mind, and I'm confident you'll find a solution. I hope that was helpful.
Thank you for your confidence. Thank you, everybody, for your time and ideas. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
What happens next?
You read my mind. So the direction now typically would be to continue this to a date certain. If you have a timeline you think, maybe you'll be prepared to present this in 2 meetings, 3 meetings. There was a PSA extension signed, so we have until April 13th to take action on the application. So between that time, we have, you can continue it to a meeting date uncertain if you're not sure right now how much time you'll need, which I think probably would make the most sense. And then, but there are a handful of meetings, so pending on quorum and availability, there's March 7th, March 21st, April 4th. So I guess 3, where this could still be heard with time to make a decision.
Do you want to do date uncertain and decide later? Okay.
I think that makes.
So just let me interject. This is not a public hearing or a hearing in which there was a decision made.
Oh, true.
Or going to be one, so there does not need to be a continuance or a scheduled date for hearing.
Oh, okay.
Good catch. Sorry.
Okay, so
that it will come, I think what we do now, our next steps that we've done before is we go back and we work with the applicant. And we look at what those directions were to try to help if we can. I think that this applicant gets it. And then we would schedule a date of a hearing that's open and, taking into account all the story polls and all the other things that have to take place. So I think it'll be at least a month or 2.
okay. Thank you so much. I guess meeting is adjourned. Thanks.